It was a crime so brazen, so methodically executed, that it seemed ripped from the pages of a political thriller. The CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson, was gunned down in cold blood on a busy Manhattan street, an execution caught on surveillance camera. But in the weeks since the shocking murder, the case has taken an even stranger turn. The accused killer, 36-year-old Luigi Mangione, has amassed an almost cult-like following. His supporters claim he's not a criminal but a revolutionary, a man taking a stand against corporate greed. They've raised hundreds of thousands for his defense, insisting his prosecution is part of a corporate-backed narrative. And as mainstream media scrambles to make sense of the case, one question lingers. Was this an act of vigilante justice or a cold-blooded assassination? The attack was swift, calculated, and caught in chilling clarity on surveillance cameras. On the evening of December 4, 2024, United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson stepped out of a Midtown Manhattan hotel, unaware that his every move had been studied. The street was alive with the usual city bustle, horns blaring, pedestrians lost in their own routines, when a masked figure emerged from the shadows. Without hesitation, the assailant raised a gun and fired. Thompson barely had time to react before collapsing onto the pavement, the sound of gunfire slicing through the urban noise. A woman nearby froze in terror before bolting in the opposite direction. But the killer? He didn't run. He simply turned and walked away, vanishing into the night with unnerving calm. Surveillance footage would later reveal the gunman's deliberate escape. Instead of making a beeline out of the area, he took an erratic, meandering route, winding through Central Park as if he had all the time in the world. No frantic getaway, no panic, just a slow, calculated disappearance. Within hours, the video of the cold-blooded execution spread like wildfire, setting off a media firestorm and leaving investigators with one pressing question: who was behind the mask? For 5 days, Luigi Mangione was a ghost. A man whose face was plastered across news broadcasts, wanted posters, and social media, but nowhere to be found. In a city as vast as New York, with thousands of cameras tracking every movement, how did he slip away so effortlessly? Authorities were convinced he had a plan. Surveillance footage showed him vanishing into Central Park after the assassination, but then, nothing. No record of a bus or train ticket, no credit card transactions, no digital footprint. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air. Whispers of a broader conspiracy began circulating online. Was he receiving help? Did he have underground connections? Or was he simply that good at covering his tracks? Then, on December 9, 2024, a call came in from an unlikely place, a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. A customer, scrolling through their phone while eating breakfast, glanced up and froze. Sitting just a few feet away, casually eating a hash brown, was the man everyone was looking for. Police wasted no time. Within minutes, officers surrounded the fast food restaurant. But Mangione didn't run. He didn't panic. When they walked in, he simply looked up, as if he had been expecting them all along. He was wearing a medical mask, but the moment officers locked eyes with him, they knew. It was him. The real shock came when they searched his bag. Inside, they allegedly found the very thing investigators had been searching for, the murder weapon. But that wasn't all. There was something else, something even more disturbing, that made authorities question whether this was really just about one man's grudge against the healthcare industry. What they found would change the entire narrative of the case. Luigi Mangione barely looked up when the officers walked in. He was sitting in a corner booth at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, casually eating a hash brown as if he didn't have a care in the world. But the people around him knew better. They had seen his face on the news, read the headlines, and now he was right there in front of them. Someone made the call. Within minutes, the restaurant was surrounded. Officers moved in, hands on their holsters, ready for anything. But Mangione? He didn't run. He didn't fight. When they asked for his ID, he handed them a fake one, like it was routine. It almost worked, until one of the officers looked closer, then looked at him. Even with the medical mask covering part of his face, they knew it was him. They took him into custody without a struggle. But the real shock came when they searched his bag. Inside, investigators found exactly what they had feared: a gun, later confirmed to be the same one used to kill United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Next to it, a 3D printed suppressor, custom-made, untraceable. But there was something else. A second fake ID, this one matching the name he had used to check into a Manhattan hostel just days before the murder. Receipts from New York, placing him at key locations in the days leading up to the crime. And most chilling of all, a notebook filled with cryptic notes, entries that prosecutors say prove the killing wasn't just planned, but part of something bigger. Mangione didn't react as officers read him his rights. He didn't ask what he was being arrested for. He just stared ahead as if he had already accepted what was coming next. But outside that McDonald's, the world was about to explode. The arrest should have ended the story. Instead, it was just the beginning. Because as soon as news broke, Mangione's supporters mobilized. They called him a revolutionary, a man standing against corporate greed. And in a matter of hours, a simple murder case turned into something else entirely, a movement. But was he really a symbol of resistance, or just a cold-blooded killer? The evidence pointed one way, his followers another. And now, as he faced charges that could lead to the death penalty, one thing was clear. This case was far from over. The case should have been open and shut, a high-profile murder, surveillance footage, and a suspect caught red-handed with the murder weapon. But then something strange happened, something no one saw coming. Instead of universal outrage, Mangione's arrest sparked something entirely different: support, admiration, even devotion. It started online with whispers in niche forums and cryptic posts on social media. Then, within days, it exploded into a full-blown movement. #Free Mangione was trending. Fundraisers popped up, raking in hundreds of thousands for his legal defense. People weren't just defending him, they were idolizing him. To them, Mangione wasn't a criminal. He was a symbol, a vigilante who struck at the heart of corporate greed. A man who, they believed, was silenced by a system that profits off suffering. The more the media called him a murderer, the more his supporters dug in. The footage? A smear campaign. The evidence? Planted. The case itself? An orchestrated takedown by billionaires. Then came the rallies, masked figures holding up signs with his face, chanting his name in the streets. Theories ran wild. Was he acting alone? Was this part of something bigger? Some even claimed he had ties to underground activist groups, while others insisted he was a scapegoat, framed to send a message. The real question? How did a man accused of an assassination become a martyr almost overnight? And if his supporters were right, if there was more to the story than what authorities were saying, then what exactly had they uncovered? One thing was certain. The trial wasn't just about justice anymore. It had become a battleground. And the verdict? It wouldn't just decide Mangione's fate. It could ignite something far bigger. Luigi Mangione isn't just facing a trial, he's walking into a war. A war fought in courtrooms, on social media, and in the streets. Federal prosecutors are building what they call an airtight case. Surveillance footage, DNA evidence, a murder weapon recovered in his possession. To them, this is simple. A cold-blooded assassination, meticulously planned and flawlessly executed. But for his supporters, it's anything but. His legal team is preparing for battle, backed by a growing army of online activists and deep-pocketed donors. They claim the prosecution is tainted by corporate influence. That key evidence doesn't add up, that this case is bigger than Mangione, that it's about power, control, and a system desperate to silence those who challenge.